With its French and Spanish influence, New Orleans jazz has a distinctive flavour. So too does its boogie woogie. In fact, there are claims that the form originated here.
I would say that Boogie Woogie was the bad little boy of the rag family who wouldn't study. I heard crude beginnings of it in the back streets of New Orleans in those early years following 1904. But they really were back streets. More crude than Pine Top's efforts, such music never got played in the gilded places. New Orleans historian Roy Carew.
The New Orleans style was somewhat different. It had more of a kind of habanero bass, a little bit more accentuated left-hand rhythm.
Yes, this is what they call the Spanish tinge. Jelly Roll Morton was talking about the Spanish tinge, and you hear it in these pianists today, and indeed even in the rhythm of some of the sort of Creole words, like two-way, back-away. You get a strange rhythm that is not found in normal black music outside that area.
Although considered the originator of boogie woogie in the city, Professor Longhowe was actually a second-generation player. His influence was Toots Washington, not well known because not recorded, but inescapably the real source.
That's what I was saying all the time.
We don't want no papa diddly do papa diddly dop, because if we do, we're going to cut in on him.
Before Washington and Longhowe died, filmmaker Stevenson Palffy had the good sense to stage a classic session at which they were joined by the leading representative of the contemporary New Orleans sound, Alan Toussaint. Pianist Pete Johnston was already a mainstay of the thriving Kansas City jazz scene. With blues shouter Big Joe Turner, they not only fueled the music of that city then, but were a major influence on early rhythm and blues. Johnston's composition, Roll 'em Pete, set the style. Roll 'em without the Pete this time was a key composition of another Kansas City pianist, Mary Lou Williams. She's seen here playing it in Kansas City at her acceptance concert at Rockhurst College, when awarded an honorary degree in music for her contribution over 50 years to American music. The widespread popularity of Boogie Woogie might never have occurred but for the enthusiasm of that foresighted promoter of black music in the 30s and 40s, John Hammond. He'd already discovered Bessie Smith and Billie Holiday, and now Boogie Woogie caught his ear and his attention. Although originally recorded in 1928, Meade Lux Lewis's Honky Tonk Train Blues had sold only moderately as a race record, that is, to blacks only. Hearing it again in 1935, Hammond quickly got Lewis to make a new version of his classic, but could get no American label to issue it. It was the English Parlophone label that obliged. Lewis dropped out of sight again, and it was only after a long search that Hammond found him washing cars in Chicago.
And he made no impact at all. And the whole thing was a disaster. Lewis, nobody was interested, and Lewis went back to Chicago, and a very disappointed man. But it was in 1938 that the second concert, the important one, took place, the Carnegie Hall Spirituals, the Swing one.
The concert was reported in both Walter Winchell's nationally syndicated column and in the New York Times.
Albert Ammons, Meade Lux Lewis, and Pete Johnson, all from the West, lived their music. They could barely contain themselves when the music was underway. And what endurance!
The result was unprecedented. Boogie Woogie had become a national craze literally overnight. The newly famous purveyors of this raw piano style were booked into Barney Josephson's new club for the smart set in Greenwich Village, Cafe Society. Boogie Woogie had gone from logging camp to supper club in less than a decade.
Albert Ammons and Pete Johnson, those two terrific pianists, are going to play their original composition called Boogie Woogie Dream. It has always been their greatest desire to play their music to a select society in a cafe like this.
Someone who knew both Ammons and Johnson and who carries on their tradition is Big Joe Duskin. What was your own contact with Ammons and Johnson?
My own contact with him is at the time that I had taken a minister to New York, and I asked him to let me run his car. I want to run over and get some music over in New Jersey. I knew that's where Ammons lived. I always wanted to see the guy. When I got over, I went to a music store, I bought his book, and there was a violinist come in that knew Ammons' name. He says, I see you like Boogie Woogie. He says, go up the street. We go to his home. We goes up the street. Here he comes down, and he's walking down the street. He says, he comes down. So what we done, he introduced me to him, and that's the first time I like to kiss the guy. I want to tell you the truth, but man, not funny now, you know, but so glad to see him. And after he introduced me to him, I says, Ammons, I told him this last, I come all the way to Cincinnati. From Cincinnati, just to hear you play a couple of boogies. He says, going right down to a little bar down the street. Come on, we all walk down. But that's where he used to go in and drink a little bit, you know. So he goes in and he sits and he plays this Boogie Woogie stuff. I loved Ammons because he used a lot of 6th and 4th and 5th and that, and he makes it up. And then he do the... I like that because of his tremolo and stuff like that. He could really lay it down when he comes into that.
What about Johnson?
Okay, now at the time that I met Johnson, we goes back up to New York City, and I found out that Johnson lived in Buffalo. I went to a gas company, I got all their telephone books, and I couldn't find his name in there nowhere. So somebody told me where he lived at in Buffalo. I can't think of the street now. And I'm standing out in front of the house. He gets out the car with some groceries, him and Marge, and they coming in. So he saw me, he says, can I help you? I said, yes, I'm looking for Pete Johnson. He says, I'm Pete. I like to drop to the ground, you know, right there at this time. So he invited me in the house. I went in and introduced me to Marge. Then he played a couple of songs in there for me. Now, here's the thing that Pete told me. Said, if I could run this bass like this, have a devil of a good left hand, I'd be a good pianist. Johnson was the main two that really did influence me. And that's the thing that really got me teed off.
You found it quite hard to get started as a boogie player. Your father objected, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Listen, I loved the old guy, but the old man was a minister. He'd throw you in hell just to look at you if you did wrong. And I'll tell you what he used to do. He used to tell me, don't never play no devil's music in the house, but when he'd go to church, now he'd always carry that umbrella. This morning he didn't take it. And he's going on the bus. I had kids out watching. He got on the bus and said, hey, that old man's gone. But I'd always play in the key where I could swing it in. Be not dismayed, whatever you do, God will take care of you. So when he was gone, this is the old song I used to do. Then the old man was looking in the window, and I seen him looking, I said, I'm coming in there and take care of you right now. And boy, he did. So I told him one day, I said, Dad, I said, you're going to be beating me every day. I'm going to have to play this stuff. He said, well, why don't you just do this? Come in here. I want to talk with you. And I went in. He says, look, I'm 89 years old. Why don't you just wait till I get in the grave? And after I'm dead and gone, you do what you want to do. And I won't be able to do it. I said, God, that's okay. I said, Dad, I'll do that. And I even went through the service, went around, couldn't play nothing. When the old man got over 100 years old, I went to Mom and said, hey, this guy going to live like Methuselah. And she didn't want me to talk about him anyway. I said, God, Mom, I can't even play a note till he's in the grave. I said, look, And so when he got 105, I just threw up both hands. And I never did touch the piano after he was gone until Steve Tracy told me to get it back. He says, hey, why don't you just come with me? He's a good harmonica player. And that's what happened. I got back into it, and that's why I'm playing it now, you know.